So one of my most anticipated games of 2022 was indeed Bayonetta 3. I've been waiting for this game for a very long time. I've become a huge fan of action-adventure games. I really like these sorts of games, and the first two Bayonetta games were very satisfying experiences to me. I really enjoyed these games, but then, of course, the original voice actress of Bayonetta in Bayonetta 1 and 2, Helena Taylor, came out, started this boycott Bayonetta campaign because she said that she was lowballed. It came out that she was actually lying about it. That's why she didn't reprise her role, this, that, and the other. Your Twitter check marks, your video game industry people were quick to villainize the video game industry, even though it pays their bills. And then when the story came out that she was actually fabricating and embellishing this whole situation, nobody really said anything. All those things aside though, I've made a million videos about those on my channel. Be sure to watch them. There's still a game to talk about with this. There's still the actual Bayonetta 3 game. And how is this game going to perform on the Switch? Was this going to be a game that really pushes the hardware to its limits? It's been in development for 5+ years now. Was it going to be worth the wait? What's the actual truth about Bayonetta 3? And yes, there's been a bunch of videos about it already because people got early review copies, but those people don't matter. RGT matters, and you want to know the actual truth about Bayonetta 3, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So the story of Bayonetta 3 is kind of interesting. I'm not going to go too deep into it because there are some twists and turns that end up happening with it, but basically there is a new man-made bioweapon that's inflating. So for the story of Bayonetta 3, it's pretty crazy, honestly, and that's kind of a theme that goes on with this game. Very over the top. There's some new man-made bioweapons made by an entity called Singularity, which are basically trying to destroy the universe and all the different multiverses. There's different multiverses that are running parallel to the universe that Bayonetta has been in before. So they're basically trying to stop this thing called Singularity and all of these man-made bioweapons, trying to figure out, what's going on behind this. You end up meeting different variations of Bayonetta throughout the story. There's, of course, Viola, who is a new character, a witch in training that ends up crossing paths with Bayonetta. You end up working with her, this, that, and the other. There are some twists and turns that keep things pretty interesting throughout, but for the most part, I was just kind of confused a lot of the time, to be perfectly honest with you. Obviously, a good versus evil sort of story here. That works for me. That's all I really need with a game like this, because I'm not really playing Bayonetta for the story. I've never really been super interested in it. There's a bunch of returning characters like Ronin and Enzo, which are good to see within this game, but for the most part, Bayonetta 3 has always been a game that I was focusing more so on the combat and the gameplay. What could they do to really sort of change things up from previous Bayonetta games in order to keep things fresh throughout? Now, one of the main things about the gameplay in Bayonetta are the areas that you're in, because I think the areas are much larger than they've been in previous Bayonetta games. It's not an open world sort of thing or anything like that, but as far as the exploration is concerned, there's actually quite a lot of explorations within the levels. While it's still a linear game at its core, the levels themselves have lots of branching areas that you could, basically go into and explore to find things like your currency in the game, or even find hidden paths or hidden sort of submissions that you could do within it. You're not going to see everything that the game has to offer in the first playthrough of the game, which I honestly like, because it encourages to replay through the game. It encourages to replay through the missions again, because there's lots of collectibles, there's lots of sub stuff that you don't necessarily have to do, but I like that being an option because it gives you that additional depth to go back and play through the game. The areas themselves, there's a variety of different areas. Some definitely look better than others. We'll get more so into that when talking about the graphics of the game, but I was definitely impressed with just the areas themselves and how there's that sort of a little bit of a sense of freedom that you can have within it. As far as the actual combat and traversal systems are concerned, that's where things just get completely crazy with this game, because the game throws a million different things at you that can feel a bit overwhelming at times, but once you sort of get it, it's super awesome. For the most part, you do play as Bayonetta. There are some missions where you also play as Viola, and Bayonetta and Viola honestly feel pretty different. They have different combat styles. When you're playing as Bayonetta, in order to get witch time, which essentially slows everything down and allows you to do big combos while that's happening, you have to dodge attacks, whereas when you're playing with Viola, you actually have to parry attacks. So it definitely feels very different. can be a bit jarring when you're switching back and forth between the characters, between chapters, but for the most part, it does work very well. The combat has definitely been refined in this game as well, because now you have like demon slave things that you can do. Basically, you have a bunch of demons at your disposal that you can call into battle at pretty much any time, and by doing this, as long as your magic meter is full, you can get these big demons to come and do your dirty work essentially for you. So if you're struggling in a battle, call upon the demons and the demons will come in. There's lots of summoning that you can do. There's a bunch of varieties of demons that you end up getting throughout the game, and you could switch them on the fly for the most part. Now, your demons might die at points, but it's not really that big of a deal because they'll recharge and then they'll come back. I was very impressed with how seamless everything is as far as summoning your demons are concerned. It's pretty much on the fly. So you just press a button, they pop up, and you can start doing damage with them. Now, beyond just, you know, playing as the demons, they actually have their own skill tree as well, and you can do combos. Of course, you can do combos with Bayonetta and Viola, all the different weapons that you end up getting with Bayonetta, which are a ton of different weapons that pretty much change everything from traversal to basically combos and attacks. Some are based on speed, some are based on strength, this, that, and the other. Very impressive stuff when it comes to the gameplay. I really like how it feels like Platinum found inspiration in a lot of different games and then implemented it into this game. There's elements that feel like Spider-Man within the game. Yes, seriously, you slang web as you're going throughout a crumbling city playing as one of the demons. There's inspirations of Panzer Dragoon with sort of escaping areas that are in a bit of a on a dragon style thing. There's shoot 'em up elements. There's elements of elevator action, which is a deep cut for a lot of people. So the gameplay is constantly changing and constantly refining. And of course, you get the ability to get new weapons as you keep playing throughout the game. So everything really just feels fresh throughout. You never really get bored with what you're doing. You never really get bored with the combat or anything like that, because besides the fact that you end up, you know, playing as two different characters at times, you also have the ability to constantly upgrade your stuff via the skill tree as well. So gameplay wise, it's phenomenal. Obviously, you know, with this gameplay style and with this sort of game, you have to talk about performance of the game, and that's where things get a little bit rocky. First and foremost, let's talk about the audio. The music in the game is very well done, and Jennifer Hale, shouts out to the queen mommy Jennifer Hale, because she does an excellent job voicing Bayonetta, and I thoroughly enjoyed her voice work, much more so than Helena Taylor. But when it comes to the graphics of the game and the performance of the game, this is where you're kind of like, damn, I wish there was a successor to the Switch, or a way that made Switch games play a little bit better for beefier titles. Now, they target 60 frames per second. They definitely miss that target at times. I wouldn't say it's super noticeable though. You would think in an action game like this, it would be noticeable, but I feel like Platinum somehow does a good job at keeping all the stuff on the screen crazy without really getting the game bogging down. Now, when you have like the kaiju battles, which are like the big battles that happen very few and far between, the frame rate definitely goes like in half. It's like 30 frames per second, and you could definitely feel that there is a bit of a lag when it comes to your input of mechanics. So it kind of detracts a little bit from the kaiju battles, but the kaiju battles are near and far between. As far as the actual gameplay is concerned, I think Platinum Games like does a good job of hiding some of the inconsistencies. You have things kind of like see-through textures as well, like when you're fighting against enemies, they'll use tricks like that to make the texture see-through so that the game still keeps a decent frame rate while playing it. So that's a nice thing in theory, because it does sort of focus in more so on the performance of the game than the graphics, but there's definitely some very dodgy stuff. There's some stuff that looks absolutely beautiful in this game. There's some stuff that looks like, you know, an early Xbox 360 game when it comes to it. And, you know, it's a shame. Digital Foundry said that they felt that this game lacked polish. I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's a lack of polishing issue. I think it's a hardware issue at this point in time. I mean, you have first-party Nintendo games that struggle on the Nintendo Switch. Of course, a third-party, or second-party, I guess I should say, game is that's, you know, focused on a more realistic art style and focused on high resolution and big battles and stuff like that. Of course, it's gonna sort of struggle. You know, it's not enough to ruin the game for me, though. I wouldn't say it's enough to ruin the game, because there are some scenes that you come across that are absolutely gorgeous. There's a lot of destructible environments in the game as well. A lot of the different demon transformations are just super, super cool. And I really like the overall graphics for the most part. I just wish that they were a bit more consistent throughout. Some of the areas that you come across are just kind of barren and there's not a lot of stuff going on. There is some pop-up here and there when you're playing it in handheld mode. Everything takes a cut. I actually played most of this game in handheld mode and I thoroughly enjoyed it still. You know, I was able to have a good enough time. I am playing on the Switch OLED. Now, beyond some graphical inconsistencies and whatnot, are there anything else that I don't really necessarily like about the game? I would have to say, I'm not really a fan of Viola. Like, I didn't really enjoy playing as Viola. The character itself is fine, but playing as Viola, I was always like, I want to play as Bayonetta instead. And I think it was because of the whole witch time mechanic, because having to parry instead of having to dodge, you know, when you're so used to dodging, it can be a little bit jarring. You know, I ended up getting into the groove with her as a character, but still, you know, I wasn't completely sold. Some people might not like the story, you know, it is very sort of convoluted and over the top, but I feel like that adds to the game because that's kind of the perfect motif for this game, is just how over the top it is, how crazy it is, how ridiculous it is, and just, you know, some of these set pieces and the battles that you do and the combat that you do in the game, just completely crazy. It's a crazy game. If you're a fan of the first two Bayonetta games, I think that this is the best Bayonetta that they've ever released with Bayonetta 3. Yes, there are graphical performance issues. Yes, it's not the prettiest looking game in the world at times, but at other times it does look very pretty. But overall, I thoroughly enjoyed this game. You know, I thoroughly am enjoying. This is a game, when I play it, I just have a smile on my face because I feel like it manages to do what I want a video game to do sometimes. You know, sometimes I don't want to play a realistic style game. I want to play something that's completely batshit crazy, that's just over the top, that throws a bunch of stuff at you. It can feel a bit overwhelming at times, but for the most part, it's a really fun game. I really enjoy the replayability of this game as well. I think that's a huge plus, and damn it, whenever that new Nintendo Switch comes out, if it upscales the older games, I will be playing Bayonetta 3 on that once again, because I think that would really just be beautiful. You know, if this game had, you know, pinpoint performance of what a lot of modern consoles have nowadays, it would arguably be one of the best games of the year. I still think you could say it's one of the best Nintendo Switch games of the year, like for sure. And really 2022 was a down year anyway, so you might even have that in your conversation. For me, I do wish the performance was a little bit better, but overall, super enjoyable game. Definitely had fun with it, and I will continue to have fun with it. So let me know in the comment section down below if you plan on picking up Bayonetta 3, if you're a fan of these styles of games. If not, hey, thanks for watching the video anyways. I appreciate you. You are a good person. And as always, guys, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.